Okay. I wanted to make a video. It's late. It's early or late, depending on how you look at it. Because my sleep schedule's off. But what I want to talk about, what I really want to talk about, this is why I'm so adamant, or why I'm so adamant about people trying to be independent. Yeah, and I know it sucks as an independent because most independents don't get to the level of fame and stardom and success and financial success like you've heard in the past from major artists like, you know, Michael Jackson or Prince or Janet Jackson, or just artists that became where they, you know, they're living in these big mansions and driving these expensive cars and all that. But that also has some consequences that you may not realize. Kind of like if you made $1 million, let's say you made $20 million, so that allowed you to buy a $1 million mansion. Well, the problem with $1 million mansion is not that it's, you know, mansions are nice. The problem is the maintenance, upkeep, and the property tax. $1 million mansion just puts you in $100,000 property tax that you have to pay every year on that. It's the reason why a lot of lottery winners don't realize when they, you know, because if you think about a lottery winner, that's just a one time. So they get that, they win a $5 million or whatever. They only get that one time, and they're going to take all the taxes, so they really only get about half of that. And they go around and buy this $1 million home. You know, they spend cash on $1 million home. That only leaves about a 1.5 million, but you still got to pay your monthly. You still got to pay your monthly bills, you know, lights, water, gas every month, and then you got to pay the property tax every year. And so they don't realize they're going through their cash rapidly, and before you know it, and within 5 years they're broke. Now they're forced to sell that $1 million mansion because they didn't realize they couldn't stay in it because you got to keep making income to maintain it, and that's what hurt all lottery winners. They don't, you know. So, but yeah, then going back to the music and all that, here's the thing about the contract. If you really think about this, and this is where I'm so adamant about record labels, the whole thing is kind of like this. Let's say you come up with your own music. You got to write your own songs. And I always say this again, you know, a lot of people think they always confuse the two. The song itself, the melody, the lyrics or whatever, that's the song. It's the idea, the melody idea, the whole idea. You know, when you sit there, I got the song. And then when it's like, man, what kind of song you got? You know, I got this song, how it goes. It go like this, blah, 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 blah. You know, how you ever sing it. When you record it, that becomes a sound recording interpretation of your song. And a lot of times, a lot of people will recreate, you know, they will sound record their own interpretation of their song. Then sometimes when you have people that remake the song, they just come up with a different interpretation of the song. It's the same song, they come up with a different version. That's why you have some artists that do a remake. They're remaking the song. They're just remaking it a different version of it. So they made a different sound recording of the same song. Prime example, if you listen to the group Intro's version of Ribbon in the Sky, and then you listen to Stevie Wonder's version of Ribbon in the Sky itself is the song. Stevie Wonder's version, when he recorded, is his sound recording of his song. And then you have Intro, which is a newer version or a different version of Ribbon in the Sky, which is a different version sound recording of the song. So the song itself is Ribbon in the Sky. And so because Stevie Wonder wrote it and recorded, he gets 2 copyrights. But when Intro recorded, they only get 1 copyright. They get an SR form to it. They can't get a PA form for it because they didn't write it. So PA form, performing arts form, whatever, is more for songwriters. And sound recording is more for the musical version that you hear when you're listening to it. So this is the whole power, whole thing of the whole thing is about copyright. Because think about it, your right to copy, meaning your right to copy, use, and distribute. So it's kind of like whenever you create something, come up with a song, you own it. The idea, the melody, the composition, you own it. The songwriter, even if you're an artist and you write your own songs, or sometimes you could be an artist and you're singing someone else's song. This is all important for how much money a person can make. Because some artists can be songwriters and the artist to record their own songs. And then some people are just songwriters that write songs and then let other, they license their stuff out to be other people to record it. And then some people are just recording artists where they record other people's songs. Then some people are both. That's why, when they say both, that's why the power of the right is with those 2 forms. And the thing is, publishing companies and record labels know this. But the person that may they may just be a novice, an inexperienced young person that don't know the business, don't know how the music business work or the industry work. All they know is they got talent to come up with these great songs. They sing them, they play them, they record them, whatever it means or whatever. So their mind, they're just creating music. I'm creating these songs and music. And that's how they may be thinking. So, but record labels, in order to protect themselves legally, still come up, and publishing companies still come up with these contracts, and they make sure that the contract have as much legal confusing jargon in it as much as possible. So that's the way they can legally take control of the copyright, because the copyright is how these publishing companies and record labels are going to make money. Now, publishing companies themselves, when it's just on the publishing side, are not as greedy as the record labels, because the bulk of the money made from an artist / musician in the music industry came from sales. I don't know why my nose is stopped up, or I get my sinuses. So because of that, they would come up with these contracts. They say, look, whether you record, because whenever a person records a song, they own it. Whenever a person writes the song, they own it. And sometimes it's multiple people recording and writing. Sometimes it's just one person recording and writing. Sometimes it's one person writing. Sometimes it's just one person recording. Irregardless, that's why there's 2 copyright forms. The PA form is for the songwriter, because it's about the song, the melody, the composition, the lyrics. The sound recording, the SR4, is the right, gives a person the right to record their interpretation of a song. So with that being So that's why there's an SR form. And the PA form copyright power of that song is powers to the songwriter, and the recording of that song is powered to the actual physical person that records it. They own it. That's why they call it author/ownership. The author or the owner, it's the same thing. Who created it? You know, who's the author? Who's the owner? And so record labels say, well, we got to find a way to take control of that. Well, the only way we can do that is we got to get them to sign a contract to say that they're going to give up their rights to the sound recording, because record labels are not really in the business of songs. They're in the business of sound recordings of songs, because it's hard to really sell a song idea to the public, but it's definitely easy to sell songs ideas to a public if there's put it on some medium that they can listen to. And that's the reason why, because that's what we do when we're listening. You know, it's kind of like, it's like when you're listening to a song and you're singing the melody or you're singing the lyrics or whatever, you're singing the song, but the music, the sound recording is what got you, right? So record labels knew this. So they came up with these things. They said, look, if you sign a contract giving up your rights, then I will help you market this song to its maximum potential. And so they would come up with this thing. It was like, well, the artist was like, well, how much, you know, if I give up, here's the thing. We're still going to pay you, but we're going to pay you a royalty, or the difference between a fee, like, which is basically a one-time payment, versus a royalty, which is a recurring payment, right? So we're going to pay you a royalty rate, a recurring payment, right? We're going to keep paying you. And so they'll come up and say, well, look, we have to come up with all the marketing and get this thing recorded and all these things, get it, you know, public, we got to get it, all these things. So they come up with, you know, all these things that they're going to do to get this sound recording so they can sell it, because they're in a record sales business. That's basically what it is. That's why sometimes this thing isn't always about talent. And there's a lot of times just to think about, this thing is about how much can they sell records. And so they come up with, well, let's say on average, and they came up with this thing, well, because we got to spend so much, I look, we'll give you between 12 and 15% of the sales. And most people say, okay, I'll do that. So what you're doing is you're giving up 100% copyright control of your own sound recorded music for only 15% of it, or 12%, or whatever you sign. So now instead of you potentially make 100% off your sound recording, you're only going to make 15% of it. And that's 15% per unit, right? Between 12 and 15% per unit, because one CD is, or one album, one cassette, one vinyl is considered one unit. So the record label, this is the sinister part that naive young artists are not aware of. A lot of naive young artists don't know that this song, the sound recording, is basically property. They don't realize that this song can make so much money in so many ways. The record labels know this, but the artists don't know this because most people come into this business not understanding all the rights and all the potential earnings that they can make off of one song. Most people did not know that. It's kind of like most people don't really put it two to two together when you hear when they hear a song on a TV commercial, or they hear music in a movie, or people are performing their song on theater, or people are performing these songs in video games, on the internet, on the radio, so many areas. Some people just assume that, oh, they're using these people's music. I hear it in all these different places. Most people don't realize that every place that they're hearing these music has paid licenses to use that music. So you got all this money that was paid to use this music in video games, on the movies, all these different entities paid, and the record labels know this. So what they'll do is a lot of record labels will not only be a record label, they will also be a publishing company. You know, if they don't have a third-party publishing company. And so, because when they hear a good song, or they think the song, or they see potential for a recording artist to make a good song, I'm gonna make a good song, a good recording, then they are thinking, I can make money from this, I can make money from that, I can make money from this. So they come up with these contracts, and sometimes the contractors say something like, we'll sign you, get you exploited, and get you, that way you'll be able to you'll get that exposure that will allow you to be at the Grammys, the red carpet treatment. You'll be on the radio. It's perceived that way, not realizing record labels still got to compete to get their artists exposed to everything they're promising with no guarantees. So the record contract, another issue with the record contract is your ability, in case the record label is screwing you or not fulfilling their obligation, or whatever the case may be, or they get sold out, or they get changed, and whatever, or the A&R people change, or a whole bunch of things where the record label object is to try to make money in every possible aspect as possible. So sometimes they don't want to let recording artists out of their contract. They always come up with these ways to keep the artist stuck in the contract, like extending, or whatever the case. Or they'll have things like, well, you can't really be released from your contract till you recoup. We recoup all our money or whatever. Just any little shady thing about it. And so a lot of people don't read that because they don't read the contract. Because a lot of times it's kind of like this. When these advance money, when they give artists advance money, they're just giving you a set amount of money up front, even though they're going to recoup it back, even though it's technically the artist's money. This is so shady. We're going to get all this money back. But they say, okay, when he said, well, we initially agreed to 12 or 15% of the sales, they said, yeah, we're going to give you, how much is a unit? $11.99 a unit. Yeah, but we're going to $11.99, but we got to deduct how much it costs, the manufacturing cost. We got to deduct that. We got to deduct free goods, which means we're going to offer promotional copies and to record stores and radio stations and all that. packaging, artwork, and all that. So really, after you deduct all that, instead of $11.99, you're only going to get 12 or 10 or 15% minus, $5 in deductions. So jump from $11.99 to like $6.99. So you only get 12% of $6.99. That's what they're going to pay you, right? But we have to recoup our touring support, our marketing, and our advance money first. So if they don't, that's the reason why the artists usually don't see any money, because that's where they get you. So even though the records, it's such a scam. Even though the record, I got it. Where's my math? I have to do my math on this. I had to pull out my calculator. This is such a ripoff. It's the recoupment and the deductions. Where is it at? So $6.99 times point, let's say 12%. So 83 cents of the $6.99 the artists get per unit. So if it sells 500,000 copies, remember it was $11.99. Can't count the tax. The tax goes to the IRS. But 500,000 times, it actually was $11.99, right? So it made $5,995,000, $5,995,000. That's what it actually made, because that's how many units were sold. But they told you all the BS. Well, we're going to deduct manufacturing costs, packaging, free goods, and all that. So we're only going to give you the percentage that we offered you at $6.99. So let's say $6.99 times 500,000, right? $3,495,000, right? So $3,495 versus, I'm gonna take $5,995, deduct $3,495. That's $2,500,000 they're going to automatically take on the top, automatically, simply because you're the artist, we're the record label, we got the leveraging power, we can do what we want to do because we're the record label, we own the label. You needed us, you wouldn't be able to get where you're at. It's the arrogance, right? It's the arrogance of it. So now, let's go back to that 3,495, and let's times 0.13%. So after they're done, this is $500,000, right? So they got, the artists end up, after they came up with all that, the artist is supposed to have gotten $454,350, right? But how much advance did we give you? We gave you a $500,000 advance. So let me take that $454,350, right? $500,000 advance that we gave you minus $454,350, right? So the artist, it still owes the label $46,650. That's just the advance. And then the touring support was another $750,000. So let's see, 450, So let me see, 46,550, whatever it is. Plus, they owe $750,000 in touring support. So now the artist owes the label almost $800,000, and that's not including. Now, touring support is supposed to cover the travel costs, hotels, booking, all the booking, using booking agents to book all these venues like Radio City Hall and all this, and so forth. Now, this is old system record label. So the artist could still at least sell merchandise that wasn't attached to their contract. So let's say they sold selling t-shirts and hats. And the t-shirts and hats, let's say the hats were $10.99 and the shirts were $15.99 each. So let's say it's $26.98 for this merchandise, right? So now, let's say they tour 100 cities, and they sell that merchandise on the side. And let's say each city they're sold at an average of 15,000 hats and t-shirts. So on average, so let's say 15,000 shirts and t-shirts per. So let's say times 15,000. They made $404,700 in one setting. Let's say that times 100. They do 100. So now they've made $40 million. $40,470,000 they made. Now they can pay. Let's deduct that $800,000 they owe the label. So now, now that's a real high number. Most people aren't selling that many t-shirts and hats, but I'm just throwing out some numbers. Now they can pay back the labor, the touring support, and the other remaining amount of money. So now that they, whatever the case, but sometimes the record labels may not tell the artists that they paid them back, or they're they fully recouped. So that's the reason why when they want to have it in the contract, the ability to audit, and let's look at those books. And this is what the business manager and artist manager and artist you're supposed to be doing to make sure that they're getting paid fairly. So I'm going to be more realistic. Let's say more like $3 million. So let's say it's more like 5,000 hats and t-shirts instead. So they made $3 million. So they made $2 million off of merchandise. And then with the touring, let's say the ticket sales were anywhere from $25 to $150. So on average, let's say on average $65 a ticket, and they sell out 5,000 seats times 5,000. $325,000, right? Now we got a minus. It took $250,000 to book it. So after they're done, they got $75,000 from that one site. And they say, once again, it's 100. Let's say they on average times 100 with 100 places. So now they made $7,500,000. But not only did they pay the site and lighting and the sound crew and all that, but they still got to pay another for the musicians, the dancers, the security, and everything else. So that's they got to minus $3 million for all that. So that leaves the artists $4,500,000 they made, plus the $2 million they made off of merchandise, because they're not going to make any money off the sales, So now let's say the album went certified gold, but it's still selling. So after it keeps selling, now they get an additional, let's say it goes platinum and becomes certified platinum. It can become certified platinum on the same day. It can become certified platinum in a couple of years later, or whatever the case, if it's still selling. This is the reason why this stuff is registered with Nielsen SoundScan, Sound Exchange, and Billboard, and the RIA is tracking the sales of this stuff, and that's why the record labels have an interest in what's being sold. So, with that being said, I lost my train of thought. So let's say they get another 450,000 from the record sales, because they're only getting 15 or 12 or 13% of the sales from the record label, or plus. Now the artist has got roughly between what they're supposed to have is $6,954,350, but they still have all the bills they got to pay: car insurance, car notes, their expenses. They still got to pay their yearly property tax on their house they own and all that. So let's say this is costing them about an average about $900,000 a year. So that's nine. That took it from $6,905,000 to down to $6,054,350. And then they got to pay, and they still had to pay producers, their artist manager, their road manager, lawyers. So let's deduct another $2 million for all that. Now they're down to $4 million, 54,000. You see where the money's starting to shrink real fast on this. This is if everything goes in a perfect setting. But when you got record labels trying to recoup, what you eat and what you buy, clothes, gas, everything else, all that stuff starts to add up to another couple of $1 million that they got to pay back the label in recoupment, because they put all that in the contract. So in the end, it's kind of like who owns the copyright. Whoever owns the copyright gets paid. So if you give up your copyright rights, you give your rights. It's like a beneficiary. If you give up your beneficiary rights, so if you die, the money don't go to. It's going to go to who's the beneficiary. So it's kind of like if your music is owned by the record label, the sound recording, the masters, they're going to make the money because they own it. And sometimes they'll put in there, forever. They put forever clause in there. Well, we're going to own it forever, because as long as they can keep your music that you recorded as their own category of works, we own these songs. Yeah, we know that you recorded them, but we own them. They can make the money from Spotify and Pandora and radio and everything else when it comes to mechanical royalties and all that, and streaming and all this other stuff. They can make the money. It's the same thing with the publishing. It's kind of like because the songwriter also get paid, because even though the song is being sold, see, record labels make their money on sales. Publishing companies make their money off of usage and how the song is being used. Record labels make their money off of how the song is being sold. So publishing companies probably a different video. But yeah, that's because I think the going rate for the songwriter to get paid off mechanical royalty is 9.1 cents for any song under 5 minutes. The songwriter gets 9.1 cents of that mechanical royalty. But then they supposed to split that between the songwriter splits that 9.1 cents between the songwriter themselves and the publisher. So it's supposed to be 50-50 or something like 50-50 with 75%, or what, I have to forget like the numbers like that. But anyhow, so if you sold 500,000 units, the songwriter should get $91,000 of that, and the recording artist should have gotten 454,000, right? Of all of the total amount. It doesn't always go that way, but that's what's supposed to happen. So the songwriter and the recording artist are always involved in supposed to getting money, but when a songwriter has a publishing deal and they're signed to a publishing company, they're usually a 50-50 deal. But when a recording artist is signed to a record label, it's usually a low percentage deal. And that's why this is such a shady business. And they've been doing this for years, because they know most people are desperate because they want to be a star, that they don't stop to think, how's this record label, and then they realize all they're gonna do is strong arm an artist. The record labels, it's proven now that record labels, but when you have that strong arm approach, because it's kind of like when people think that no, recording artists need us. No, it's the opposite around. Record labels need recording artists, because with no recording artists, the record labels don't make any money. But they try to twist it. Yeah, without the record labels, you wouldn't be the star that you are. You wouldn't be the recording artist that you are. So I'm going to end the video. Just want you to put some thought into that. To understand, whenever there's a song and then it's recorded, there's always two parts to it: the song and the recorded interpretation of the song, which is the music. And when it's recorded, there's two things involved: a songwriter and the actual recording people, the recording artists mainly. And when you sign it, they get them to sign these contracts to give up rights so they can make the money and control how the money's gonna be made. On the same thing on the publishing side, and the same thing on the recording side. Publishing side is usually a little bit more fair, because publishing companies usually split. Because how the publishing companies get their money is they will get their money from a PRO, BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, because BMI, CSAC, ASCAP is collecting all the licensing money that all these entities pay them to use the money, to use the music and all these different platforms like movies and all that. So these entities pay the PROs, and the PRs collect the money. And once they collect all the money, they pay the publisher and the songwriter. Well, it's kind of like this: the PRs pay the publisher then pays the songwriter, because the agreement is once the publishing company receives their money from the PRO, once they receive their money from the PRO, then the publisher splits the money that they receive. And but the PRO has they had this weird thing about how much they pay publishing companies / songwriters / producers, because usually producers have deals with publishing companies, because they work with publishing companies to then they get hired by record labels when it comes to recording, anyhow. And then the record labels get their money from MROs. Like whenever a CD or an album vinyl or something like that, or even is digitally distributed, like Sound Exchange or whatever, or Harry Fox or whatever, all this money they collect, and then they pay, the MROs pay the record label, and it's supposed to pay the artist. But the record label determines how much they're going to pay their artists. So the artists usually don't see their money the way a songwriter can see their money, because the MROs still Because even though the song is mechanically fixed, even though it's still, the song is still attached to, the music is still attached to the song. So that's why they pay a percentage of the entire unit being, how many units are being sold. And they also pay what's the actual rate of 9.1 cents per unit to the songwriters. And that money split between the publisher as well, because the song is attached to the medium, like a CD or a cassette. Can get kind of complicated, but yeah, there you go. The shady part is, it's the way the record labels come up snizzle. They scam their way out of coming up reasons not to pay their artists. Like, well, we agreed to pay you 12% of what we made per unit, but you still owe us advances, or you still owe us touring support and everything else. We need to recoup all that before we can pay you. That's why the artists don't usually see any money for a long time. And then, at least the units are selling $12 a unit. Nah, yeah, but we got in the record, we got in the contract that we're only going to pay a percentage minus manufacturing cost, packaging, shipping, all these other deductions. So your percentages of that smaller amount, which means a smaller amount, they gotta, the contracts is, That's why I said that one of the biggest things you can do is get you a music lawyer and let them say, hey, this contract is not a good contract. This is not a good deal. They're not only making you give up your copyrights, your copyright to own the master sound recordings, but they're going to take all the deductions and all these recoupment fees and everything. And more 90% of people that been signing these contracts for the last 50, 60, 70 years never knew until they got wise. That's why they don't want to deal with someone that knows the business. So that's why the target audience is usually young, naive, desperate people. That's who they usually target, because they know that not smart, and I'm saying that, I don't mean that person aren't smart. I'm just saying they don't want you to be knowledgeable about the business. That's where they, and people think the advance, and they put all this advance money in front of you. They know it's psychological effect that all you see is advance money. You see money, and that's how they get you. Because they're like, well, you always constantly owe us. You owe us, or we're going to deduct where we can pay you less, or whatever the case may be. And then if you're really good, we try to come up with these non-releasable agreements where we won't release you, because our contract says that we have the ability to keep extending your contract to keep making more music. It's a way of keeping you locked into a contract. And all this other stuff, they try to, whatever case. That's why you gotta be careful with these that's why it's kind of like, man, I got a record deal, I got a record contract, yeah, but it's like, you better look at it like the same thing with, you better look at that record contract the same way you look at like buying a car. Because you sign a contract that say you will pay that dealership, that lender, this amount of money every month. If not, we have the right to repossess it, because you didn't make payment, you didn't make good on your payment, and we're gonna come get our car because you didn't pay us. So you're obligated. You sign a contract, just like when you said a contract for a loan, contract for a credit card, sign a contract for your mortgage. You're making an agreement that you're going to go by their terms. The same thing with a publishing manager deal. Contracts, you got to be careful with contracts, because the product plays psychological mind games on people that may be desperate. That's why they say never go to the grocery store hungry. Never go to a grocery store hungry. You're gonna overspend. You're not gonna be thinking correctly. So you have to be mindful. That's the same thing. The product to a record deal is, you see yourself being the next Usher or Taylor Swift or whatever. You want the stardom and fame, and they're dwindling in front of you. Like it's kind of like, it's like false hope, because the music industry is a risk. There's no guarantee that you're going to be able to go in the studio and record music that people like. There's no guarantee of that. So, and if they feel that you come back with some music and they think it's iffy, then they have the right to not release it. That's also in your contract. And you now, you know, but because they don't have to release it, because the reason why they don't have to release it, because even though you recorded it, you don't own it. They own it. Everything that you record, they own. It's like writing an article for a newspaper. You can write an article for a newspaper, but the article that you wrote, once you turn to the newspaper that this article wrote, they own it. They own it. They don't have to put the article out. And you're like, man, I worked hard on that article. Yeah, we know, but we don't like the article, so we're not going to put it out. God dang it, I wasted all. Yeah, but you're on a contract, so to go back in the studio, I'm running out of money. Well, I gave you an advance already. It's just, you better figure something out. You know, it's kind of like, yeah. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Y'all have a good one.